Okay, in this video we're going to show you how to create and use a retainer. So first of all, obviously you have to have a project, which we've created here, just a simple house remodel for demonstration. So in the project we're going to go into the Projects Billing tab. And within the Billing tab, the screen we're interested in is Transactions. So from the transaction screen, you'll see here that we have a $1,000 retainer. So how did we create that? Very simply. So within the transaction screen, we're going to go to Action, New Transaction. And we will see a screen similar to this. Some basic information, the date of the transaction, a field for notes, a place where you can enter a check number if it's appropriate. But the bulk of what we're going to do is right over here on the right side. So we're going to select Retainer, and then the program is going to show us a list of all the projects that this client has with us. And we can see that he actually has 2 projects with us. But for now we're interested in the house remodel. So we're going to put in a $1,000 retainer. So we put $1,000 in the amount, and we also want to apply that entire $1,000 to this project. So we'll also put $1,000 in the amount to apply. And then to actually apply the money, we just simply click the green check mark on the project we're interested in. We see that the system created the transaction here, and then we just click Done to save it. So we now have a $1,000 retainer on this project. So how do we actually use that retainer? Well, there's 2 ways to use the retainer. But before we can do that, we actually need an invoice. So let's just create a sample invoice to demonstrate this. So we're going to make a simple fixed fee invoice for $2,000. Okay, we have a basic invoice. And this is where one of the 2 options to use that retainer actually takes place. So if you have a need for the retainer payment to actually appear on the paper invoice directly and immediately reduce the value that the client owes you, you can do that. So while you're still in your options, and select Apply Retainer and Finalize Draft, and then you'll get some options here. It'll show you how much retainer is available, the amount of the invoice, how much we're going to apply. So in this case, let's apply $300 of our retainer. And then when we click away, we can see the screen updates, and we'll now have $700 left, and the invoice will have a balance of $1,700. We apply, and it's done. We can see here our menu has changed. We no longer have options to view or finalize our draft because it has in fact been finalized. So if we go back now to our invoices screen, we'll see there's our invoice, and we'll see the invoice has a value of $2,000 but a balance of only $1,700. And if we look at the details of that invoice, we can see down here under paid amount that we do in fact have a $300 payment. And if we actually go back to our transaction screen, we can see now that the system has created another retainer transaction, except this time it's a retainer payment. We can see that because we have both the retainer value filled in with a negative number, as well as a payment filled in with a positive number, and we can see the invoice number that payment went to. So that is one way that we can apply a retainer payment. A further way to create a retainer payment, and we'll delete this one so we can show you this. If you don't have a need to necessarily show it immediately on the invoice for whatever reason, you can apply a retainer after the fact. Perhaps you created an invoice 2 months ago, and the clients decided, oh, maybe they're not going to pay you for some reason. Happens all the time. Frequently, architects don't get paid for work they do. No problem. They already gave you a retainer. You can use it. So what we can do is come back into our action menu, make a new transaction, and again, we're going to select retainer, but this time we get a second prompt. So the system knows that this project already has a retainer on it. So it wants to know, are you taking money from the retainer to make a payment, or are you putting more money into the retainer? So we are in fact taking money from it. So we select that. It automatically fills in the entire value of what's left on the retainer. We can change that, however. So perhaps we only want to use 300 of our retainer. We put that in our amount and our amount to apply. We see we're on invoices, and we see the invoice in question. This will automatically show us only those invoices which are not paid. We can see it's for $2,000. The full amount is due. And again, we check our little green check mark. And we can see, just as before, it created a transaction for $300. It's a retainer type transaction, and we click Done to save. And just as before, we see a similar transaction with minus $300 removed from the retainer account to a $300 payment to the invoice in question. And that is the two ways you can create a retainer and use it in ArchiOffice.